In this video, we're going to look at an accessible drag and drop. It can be controlled with a keyboard, and it will expose the current state to a screen reader. Let's go ahead and preview this. And I can tab to my various drop zones, and I can press spacebar, which will open up a special menu. From there, I can make a selection, and that drag item will be moved into the drop zone. Of course, I can also use my mouse. And then we can also get feedback and start over. So let's open up a screen reader and see how that looks. So here I have NVDA open, and we have the speech viewer turned on so you can see what it says as well as listen to it. So let's reload.
Preview lesson accessible drag and drop needs 5.3.0 plus.
And then I can go ahead and tab to my first drop zone.
Pop-up menu example V1 document. Pop-up menu example V1 grouping. Drop zone 2 empty menu button sub-menu.
So here it's reading the object. First it read through the entire page, but now it's reading this particular object. I can press space.
Clear selection 1 of 6.
And
drag 3 4 of 6.
Make a selection.
Sub-menu close. Drop zone 2 selected drag 3 menu button sub-menu.
And now it tells me my drop zone name, the item that's in it, and that it is a menu button and it has a sub-menu.
Drop zone 3 empty. Menu. Clear selection 1 of 6. Drag 3 4 of 6. Sub-menu close. Drop zone 3 select drop zone 1 empty menu button sub-menu. Clear selection 1 of 6. Drag 1 2 of 6. Sub-menu close. Drop zone 1 selected drag 1 menu button sub-menu. Drop zone 2 empty. Drag 3 4 of 6. Drag 2 3 of sub-menu close. Drop zone 2 select menu button. Drop submit button. That's correct. Great job.
So let's take a look at what's going on here. First of all, we can take a look at the non-accessible version, which looks pretty similar and behaves similarly when you're using a mouse to drag and drop, but you can see that the actions are a little bit simpler. We just pair the objects, and then we handle what happens when you submit and when you try again. But for the accessible version, it's going to be a little bit more involved to set up the pop-up menu objects and to update the labels and handle focus. So first of all, let's take a look at what's going on the page. So of course, we have our drop zones. These are button objects as opposed to shapes. We have a title, everything is tagged. And then we also have our drag objects, which in this case are shape objects. We have our drag and drop manager. And then we have 3 pop-up menus. So these pop-up menus handle the options that are available for each drop zone. So we need 1 pop-up menu per drop zone. And we have inside of there, if we look at the options, we can see that the first option is to clear the selection. And then we have the other options available to us that are manually named the same as the labels on our drop zone. So if we were to update these labels to be something for our lesson content and not just placeholder content, we would also need to update our pop-up menus. Luckily, we can select all of them and edit the options. And we've chosen to put clear selection as the first option, but it could just as easily be the last option. And we also have our submit and try again buttons and our correct and incorrect feedback, which could be a different layer, whatever, but we just have some text here. Some other things that might not be immediately obvious are on our drag and drop object, we have this set for the drop overflow to limit to 1. And basically what that means is when you're building an accessible drag and drop, you need to make sure that only 1 drag item will fit in a single drop zone. With a non-accessible drag and drop, you can have more or less buckets where you can drag multiple drag items, but when you're building an accessible drag and drop, you definitely need only 1 drag item per drop zone. So you can limit that either by limiting the size of your drop zone so that they only fit a single item, or in this setting here, you can say limit to 1, and that will basically make it so that even if there were space, you would not be able to drop more than a single drag item into there. The other thing is under Edit Lesson Settings, our tab order is going to be the DOM cast order. That means that gives us better control over the tab order because we can control the placement in the cast, and the lower objects will be tabbed to sooner, and then as you hit tab, it would go through the other objects. So here we would have more control over this if we instead wanted to rearrange these. And finally, we need to make sure that our objects are in the same order when we're using tags. Just like anytime we use tags, the cast order is very important. So right here, what's very important is that our drop zone 1, 2, and 3 correspond with our pop-up menus 1, 2, and 3, because we'll be using various action blocks that assume that those are synchronized. All right, so let's take a look at these actions. So here we have drag and drop 1 on load. This is sort of acting as our page on load, but we want to make sure that the drag and drop object has loaded before we start trying to pair objects with it. So we have these standard actions that we would use with any drag and drop. We're pairing drag object 1, that's going into drop zone button 1 as the correct drop zone, drag 2, drop zone 2, drag 3, drop zone 3, and then 4 and 5 are here to act as distractors, so they're meant to be left undropped. Of course, you would set this up with your own correct answers. Then we are linking our pop-up menu objects to our drop zone buttons. So this means that this object gets linked to this one to this one, so on and so forth. That means that when I click or tell this particular pop-up menu to show, it will be placed near that button. It would either be off to the right or off to the left, depending on where there's room on the screen. Then we are firing a global event called update labels. We'll get to that later, but it basically goes through all the drop zones and updates the labels on them. Then we have this config block. This basically changes the pop-up menu default focus to false. By default, if that were set to true, when I make a selection with a pop-up menu, it would immediately set focus back onto the button that showed it. In this case, we don't want that. We want to give it a little bit of time to update the label, because if we don't do that, it would basically be reading the old value before the label has had a chance to update. Then we also have this config fallback focus on object with tag, so the default object. This is a technique that we use to define a default object that whenever focus is dropped or not managed, it automatically focuses on a specific object. So in this case, we're just using this title up here, but we've often used white text on white that says, please wait, or loading, or some sort of generic message. And then finally, we're setting text on this title as well. This next action basically tells us to show the particular pop-up menu. So when one of these drop zone buttons are clicked, or we click space when a drop zone button has focus, or we press the down arrow when we're in a special mode with a drop zone that has focus, then we're showing the equivalent pop-up menu. Whenever you're dealing with tagged objects, we use this set of blocks here to basically figure out the trigger object, which item it is in the drop zone list, so whether it's 1, 2, or 3, and then we get the equivalent pop-up menu object, and then we're showing that. So we'll see this configuration of blocks a lot. So once a pop-up menu has been shown, it will automatically grab focus, and then you can use the arrow keys and space or enter to make a selection. So once the selection is made, then we do various things. So in this case, we first check to see if the selected index that was just selected is 1. And if it was, if you remember, our number 1 option was to clear the selection. And then the rest are going to be sort of offset by 1. So here our second item is drag 1, our fifth item is drag 4. But if we detect that they have selected the first option, which was clear selection, then we're going to reset the position of that drag object. So we get the equivalent drop zone of what started this action. We get the list of all the objects that are in that zone. It might be 0 objects. It might be, if this were a non-accessible version, 4 objects. And we reset the position of those. In this case, it's either going to be 0 or 1 objects. If it is not clear selection, then we need to move the drag item. So here, let's expand this. We get the equivalent drop zone from the pop-up menu that started this action. and we get the drag item from the selected index. So if it was selected index 4, we subtract 1. We know that that is drag item 3. We get the third drag item, and then we place that in that drop zone. And then we fire update labels. We wait for half a second, and then we set focus back onto that pop-up menu object that started this, or the drop zone button that started this action. So this wait block is important. It allows the update label action to fire and update all of the labels so that when we set focus back on the drop zone, it now reads the appropriate label as opposed to saying that it's still empty. So here's the update labels action. And anytime this is called, we call it, whenever we drop something or write on page load. It's basically going to loop through all of the drop zones, and it's going to check to see if the drop zone is empty. So if it is not empty, if the number of objects within this particular drop zone is greater than 0, so 1 or more, then it will update the suffix on the drop zone button to say selected, and then it will get the first item in that list, get the text of that shape, and append it on there. So if we take a look at our drop zone buttons, these are configured so that the text says drop zone 3, drop zone 2, drop zone 1, and then the text that's on here is what's getting pulled in as well. So for these drop zone buttons, we also have the show text set to false. You could have that set to true as well if you wanted. It would just then display it on here, and you could set the font and the size. But the general idea is that we're setting a suffix onto this button. So this one is drop zone 3. It would say drop zone 3 selected, and then the text off of the shape of whatever you dropped in there. If it finds that this is not, if the number of objects in here is not greater than 0, so if it is 0 or somehow a negative number, then it will append a suffix onto this button saying drop zone 3 is empty, or drop zone 3 empty on this particular drop zone. And so every time we call this, it iterates through all the drop zones, whether you have 3 or 10, and it checks the current state to see what's in there, updates the label to either say empty or tell you what is in there. And then later when we set focus back onto that, whether we do it automatically or you tab away and tab back, that suffix and that label will be accurate. And then finally, we just have our submit and our try again button. So when we click submit, we hide any feedback that might be currently shown. We check to see if the correct object count is 5. In this case, this might trip some people up. Some people think, okay, I have 3 drop zones. This needs to be 3. But you actually have 5 drag items, and drags 4 and 5 in this particular case are dropped correctly when they are not within a drop zone. So the correct object count here looks at the drag object. So we need to set that to 5. Then we're going to show our correct feedback, wait for half a second, show focus on it, and then hide our submit button afterwards. And the same with the incorrect. If 5 are not correctly placed, we're going to show the incorrect feedback, show the try again button, wait for half a second, and then set focus on the incorrect feedback, and then hide the submit button. And then the try again is very simple. It just hides any feedback, hides a try again, shows the submit button, and focus will be lost here. We could set focus back up here, but because this is our default focus object, it's automatically going to grab it. And optionally, if you want to, you can also reset the position of all of the drag objects. I have that turned off. I want people to go back and manually see what they've done and make any changes from there. So this is most of the functionality. We never disable dragging and dropping. You could do that here. You could build out that when somebody submits an answer, you could disable the dragging or dropping on all of the drop zones. You could turn off the pop-up menu objects by setting a variable flag so that this action doesn't work while you're viewing feedback, and then when you hit try again, it re-enables it. Maybe you don't want try again. Maybe you go on to a different page. Maybe you want to allow people to step through and see what individual things they've gotten correct or incorrect. So there's a lot of options where you can build this up and make it better or for your particular use case. But in this case, we're just looking at sort of the basic operations of an accessible drag and drop. Okay, so let's go ahead and preview this. And of course, I can use my mouse. I'll just pick these up and drag them around. I can submit. I can see the focus being shown. I can turn off that focus ring if I would like. I'll try again, and this does not get reset. Again, I could turn on that one action block, and that would reset everything. But we can also use our keyboard. So I'll hit Tab. I'll hit Space on the object and make a selection. Tap to the Submit button, hit Space. There's correct, and then I would want to make sure that when I hit Tab, it goes to whatever next button I provide. So let's try this with the screen reader. Okay, so I've set my focus back in here. I've turned on NVDA screen reader. It's free. It's very configurable. I would recommend turning on the speech viewer. It helps me see what the screen reader has just said, so I don't have to necessarily listen to it. I tend to turn up the talking speed so it doesn't take forever. And then you should probably learn the keyboard commands for it. Control is a very useful keyboard command. It just basically stops it from talking, and you can then kind of pay attention to what you're doing. So I'll make sure my focus is in this window.
Lesson main landmark, drop zone 1 empty, menu button sub-menu.
Tab to get to the drop zone 1, which is empty. I'll press space.
Clear selection 1 of 6. Drag 4 5 of 6. Sub-menu close. Drop zone 1 selected, drag 4 menu button sub-menu.
And there we go. So I tabbed, I opened it, it read out everything that I was doing. When I made a selection, it then updated the label. So now it tells me drop zone 1 selected, drag 4 menu button, and that there is a sub-menu available. So let's go to the next one.
Drop zone 2 empty, menu button sub-menu.
And then let's shift tab back to the first one.
Drop zone 1 selected, drag 4 menu button sub-menu.
And it's still accurately telling me the current state of that. So now I'm going to tab to the next one, and I'm going to move drag 4 down into here.
Drop zone 2 empty, menu button sub-menu. Clear selection 1 of 6. Drag 4 5 of 6. Sub-menu close. Drop zone 2 select menu button sub-menu. Drag 4 5 of 6. Drag 1 2 of clear selection 1 of 6.
And then I can choose to clear it.
Sub-menu close. Drop zone 2 empty menu button sub-menu.
So from here, we can go ahead and just put in the correct answers.
Drop zone 1 empty, menu button sub-menu. Drag 4 5 of 6. Drag 1 2 of 6. Sub-menu close. Drop zone 1 selected, drag 1 menu button sub-menu. Drop zone 2 empty, menu button sub-menu. Clear selection 1 of drag 2 3 of 6. Sub-menu close. Drop zone 2 selected, drag 2 menu button sub-menu. Drop zone 3 empty menu button sub-menu. Clear selection 1 of 6. Drag 4 5 of 6. Sub-menu close. Drop zone 3 selected, drag 4 menu button sub-menu.
So we'll get this wrong first.
Submit button. That's incorrect. Try again.
So here's one of the important reasons for the DOM cast order. When I hit tab, if this were set to top to bottom, left to right, there's nothing in the bottom or right of this object. But I have this layered so that this comes before here. So when I hit tab, it'll go to the try again button.
Try again button. Accessible drag and drop. Needs 5.3.0. Drop zone 1. Drop zone 3 selected, drag 4 menu button sub-menu.
All right, so here I'm going to clear this selection and choose drag 3.
Drag 4 5 of 6. Drag clear selection 1 of 6. Sub-menu close. Drop zone 3 empty menu button sub-menu. Clear selection 1. Drag 3 4 of 6. Sub-menu close. Drop zone 3 selected, drag 3 menu button. Submit button. That's correct. Great job.
So from here, I would again move on. If I shift tab, I can still actually access this drag and drop. I've never disabled it.
Drop zone 3 selected, drag 3 menu button sub-menu. Drop zone 2 selected, drag 2 menu button sub-menu. Drop zone 1 selected, drag 1 menu button sub-menu. Drag 1 2 of 6.
So
Lesson main landmark submit. Exit NVDA. Preview.
I still have some work to do here to disable dragging and dropping, and I could potentially also allow people to tab back to these objects to see what selections they've made and to tell them which ones are correct or incorrect if I have individual feedback that I'm showing, but we're not going to go into all of that detail in this particular video. And then, of course, I would also provide instructions to my keyboard and screen reader users so that they know what to expect. Remember that there are at least two types of people that would be using this. There are screen reader users who most likely are using the keyboard to navigate, and there are people that can see but do not use a screen reader, but they still need to use a keyboard to navigate an interaction like this. In any case, I hope this helps you create new accessible drag and drop interactions.